Oh, hey, that's cool. You see that big line down in the bottom? That means my mic decided not to work today. That's awesome. All right, I guess we'll do a thoughts on style video for this year's Pokemon Presents. God damn it. Happy Pokemon Day, everybody, which is either the most exciting or the most bemusing day of the year, depending on what the Pokemon Company have to show us today. Now, normally you know what to expect from the first half of one of these presentations, and this year was no exception. It's a lot of mobile game stuff, basically. Doesn't mean I wasn't still a little baited by the inevitable Pokemon Masters EX trailer, where I went, what are Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire doing here? I have tried Pokemon Masters EX, but it's one of those games where it's like got a main story, and I was like, I'll go through the main story, but the entire time it's like, no, 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 ignore that. Here's a bunch of boosts, come over here and do endgame stuff. And I'm like, no, no, I want to do the main story. But then trying to ignore that and do the main story just feels like you're wasting your time. They did announce the next Pokemon TCG Pocket set, which I'm excited about, but I've definitely fallen off of Pokemon TCG Pocket a bit with my hype. I still do the occasional short upload where I open packs and stuff, but there's only so long any game is able to keep its hooks in me for, and the fact that Pokemon TCG Pocket lasted this long is a testament to how good it is. It was one of my favourite games of last year, and I will inevitably check out the new set, but I'm still missing a lot from the current set, and I've still not even really put together a deck and looked into like how the cards battle in this current set, so I think I'm definitely on the back burner for that, but it's cool to see a new set come out for it. And then of course I saw the actual TCG proper is doing Mega Evolution, which seems like a big deal, but it does make me think, did they not do Mega Evolution back when X and Y were a thing? Is this their first time doing Mega Evolution? I don't collect actual proper TCG sets because they cost money. Definitely something I would like to get into in the future, don't get me wrong. And, you know, I do pick up the occasional pack here and there. We're talking like 1 or 2 a year. But if I want to get into TCG, I want to have a binder, and I want to get into trying to collect everything and get rares and stuff, and that would be quite pricey. Now, it's important to establish what I was kind of hoping to see going into this Pokemon Presents, because you know, it was kind of a given that we were going to see Pokemon Legends CA, and there will be more talk about that later, don't get me wrong. But the exciting thing about a Pokemon Presents is it could be anything. And so a lot of the people were hoping for Gen 5 remakes, I know. I was kind of hoping for Gen 5 remakes. I've never really been a Gen 5 guy, but, you know, remakes could always sell me on Gen 5. I would also take Let's Go Johto. I actually am a Let's Go enjoyer. What I was really hoping for, and I know it was a stupid thing to hope for because it's the 29th anniversary, not the 30th, and if we're ever going to do this, it'll be for the 30th anniversary. But what I was really hoping for was older Pokemon titles on NSO, because they're there, you could just put them on NSO. You know, add home capability, all that stuff. For bonus points, add like a remix version or whatever they call them, and actually officially add a randomizer. But yeah, especially like for GBA titles which have never seen a re-release, it would be really cool to be able to play them on NSO. And they certainly toyed with people's emotions. How many times are we gonna fall for this shit where they show you like people playing Red and Blue on the original Game Boy, and then they go up through the generations, and you're like, oh, why are they doing a thing where they're going up through the generations? Surely they're talking about this, kind of like addressing their past, and what are they going to do with their past? Are they going to put it on the eShop where it should be? They know exactly what they're doing every single time they make one of these trailers, and no, it wasn't. It wasn't that. They were announcing a new game called Pokemon Champions, which, to be fair, looks interesting. I don't know if it's for me, because it seems very PvP focused, and I've never been about PvP with Pokemon. But the idea of it seems to be you use your Pokemon home, or I guess there's some kind of progression in Pokemon Champions itself, and you fight other trainers from across the world, either from their mobile devices or from the Switch. It kind of, to me, feels like they've just taken what should be an element of a mainline game and made it its own game. But the gimmick here is that they were showing a Mega Evolution Charizard versus like a terastallized something or other, I don't remember. So that's interesting. Like, are we going to have the ability to Dynamax and Gigantamax? Are we going to have the ability to use Z moves and stuff? The idea of taking the various generational gimmicks and having them all in one place at the same time is legitimately cool. Like, that seems like a really difficult balancing act. Like, how do you control the effectiveness of a Mega Evolution versus the effectiveness of Gigantamaxing, for instance. But if they're able to pull that off, that's really cool, because you can go into your Pokemon home and you can be like, this is my Mega Evolution Charizard, this is my terrestrialized, like, flying type Charizard or something, this is my Gigantamax Charizard. It does incentivize going back through the different games and collecting different versions of the same Pokemon with their own individual gimmicks. I do wonder if you'll be able to mix and match. Can you have a Mega Evolve Charizard that's also a Gigantamax Charizard, that's also a Z-move Charizard or whatever? If Pokemon Champions has some sort of PvE mode, maybe the ability to team up with other players to take down a boss, which you can then catch and bring to home later, I would be super on board for that, but it was very much sold as a PvP experience, which I'm less interested in. But we'll see what happens. My one other thing would be, it's really cool to have home connectivity, but I don't love constantly moving Pokemon from home to a game and back. That's very much like a quality of life thing, but if they were able to do some sort of thing where you can just choose to use a Pokemon from home without having to like fully withdraw it and then deposit it later, that would be huge. Anyway, let's move on to the main topic, which is Pokemon Legends ZA. We finally got to see how the game looks, and that has been a product of much speculation given how recent Pokemon games have looked. And I am relieved to say this game looks a lot better than Scarlet and Violet. I'm also quick to add, it still looks very soft and aliasy, if you know what I mean. It still doesn't look anywhere near as good as I think it should, given that it is the most popular IP in the world. Or at least it was at one point. Let me go check that. Well, it's the highest grossing media franchise at any rate. So it is still a little bit absurd that these games look like they're struggling to look anywhere near as good as Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition, for instance. But yes, thankfully it looks better than Scarlet and Violet, and I would argue maybe a little bit better than Legends Arceus as well. It looks like it runs, which is the main thing. It looks like it runs. And of course, there's always the concern that the gameplay we're seeing in the trailer might not align with the gameplay we actually get. As far as I can recall, we don't actually have that kind of problem with Pokemon games, but there's a first time for everything. But yeah, no, it looks good. And of course, we got to see Lumio's city, and it's interesting, isn't it? Because Legends Arceus was set like hundreds of years ago, before Pokemon and humans were friends, and we got to see like a kind of like primitive version, not primitive, that's the wrong word, but we got to see like an older version of Jubilife City before it was a city, and it felt very rural in that sense. And it's so interesting that they decided to take it in a completely different direction, and we're in Lumio City in the present day. It seems like this takes place after Pokemon X and Y, and this is like, as they said in the initial reveal, an urban redevelopment plan, right? Where they want to make this a city where Pokemon and people can truly live together, which I guess it wasn't before for some reason. But yeah, it seems like this entire game will be set in Lumio City. You know, having looked at the minimap and stuff like that, the way it's put together, and for some reason it didn't really twig with me, or twig with me until just now. But you know, there are many open world city sandbox games that I enjoy, and I enjoy that they're set in a city. And this is of course a mainline Pokemon game, or at least a mainline scale Pokemon game set within a city, and that's pretty cool. Turns out I'm actually kind of down for that. When they were showing the trainer entering one of those little wild areas, and like it was this area with Pokemon in it, and there was like a car. It almost looks a little post-apocalyptic, which is interesting, but there was like this rusted car and overgrown buildings and stuff. But just like Pokemon wandering around in there, something just clicked for me, and I went, oh my god, I need this game. This game looks so cool. Totodile is one of our potential starters, and as someone who uses Totodile as a profile picture in many places, you better believe I'm excited about that. Totodile fans rise up. I wonder if we will see a oh god, what would it even be called? Lumosian Final Evolution style for Totodile. I didn't love the Hisuian Final Evolutions, I gotta say, although I did like, I chose Cyndaquil. This makes me sound like a big Gen 2 guy. I'm not really a big Gen 2 guy, but I did choose Cyndaquil, and I did like his new Final Evolution, but I didn't love Hisuian Decidui, or however you say that, for instance. So I'm a little like, oh, I'm excited to choose Totodile again. I'm a little worried that I won't like whatever new Final Evolution it might have, but yeah, whatever. Also, it's interesting that we have both Totodile and Chikorita, given that the first Arceus game had Cyndaquil. It's like they were like, actually, we want to have all the Gen 2 starters pretty early on in this Legends series. I noticed Zygarde in dog form hanging about. There was also like this kind of green goop going around a place, which might also be like a Zygarde form. I'm not really up to date on my Zygarde lore, sorry. I also saw Az around AZ. I now realize that maybe the reason it's called ZA is because maybe he wants to reverse what he stood for in life, which was war and ruin and all this stuff. It's been a while since I played Pokemon X, but yeah, as far as I remember, that's pretty much how it went. I should play Pokemon X again before this comes out. I think I said that last year. But yeah, no, ZA just looks like a good game. They did talk about, they didn't really go into detail with it, but in fights with trainer battles and stuff, movement would become a thing where, you know, attacks had a certain range to them. I don't know if I love that idea, but as someone who has played most of Yakuza Like a Dragon, where a similar thing is in effect, it's a turn-based combat game, but, you know, movement is an important part of it. You know, placement and stuff like that. That turned out to work pretty well in that game. So maybe this isn't worth the trepidation. Maybe it will turn out well, but as far as gimmicks in Pokemon games go, I just go, I don't know. I guess we'll see how that goes. But yeah, I think that's all I've got to say about this game. As for the Pokemon Presents this year in general, I would say it felt quite sparse in terms of exciting announcements. Again, I'm not sure Champions is going to be for me, so that's probably why I feel this way. But I was really hoping for like a slam dunk. Here's a Gen 5 remake, or here's Let's Go Johto, or here's some older games on NSO, and sadly, if they're doing the older games on NSO thing, they are surely holding that in reserve for the 30th anniversary. I mean, heck, we might have a Switch 2 by then, and that might have DS emulation capability on NSO, so maybe that would be a good time to release older games on NSO, because then they could do Diamond and Pearl and Black and White. Maybe they're even holding off on Gen 5 remakes for that very reason, although I would still caution them not to do that. Oh, one last thing, because I forgot to mention it earlier, I did notice that for one of the Pokemon Go events, they said you'll be able to encounter a shiny Meloetta, and I can't help but think, isn't shiny Meloetta like a special reward for completing the Pokemon Scarlet and Violet Pokedex in Pokemon Home? Doesn't that kind of devalue that reward? I know that's just a completely tangential thought, but I wanted to throw that in here. Anyway, thank you for watching. Sorry it wasn't like an actual reaction like I was intending to do originally, but I hope you enjoyed this all the same. Let me know what you thought about the Pokemon Presents. Am I being too harsh on it, or do you feel the same? Thank you for watching, and I will catch you in whatever I make next.